you all for joining me. Thank you again to Jordana and Marcelo and the entire Fashinnovation team for hosting this monumental conversation. Thank you to each of the panelists, Roberta, Annan, Farai Simoyi, and Kwaku Bediako. I would like to just give you all a moment to introduce yourselves. We can start with you, Roberta Annan, who is the founder of African Fashion Foundation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alexis, and again to the Fashion Innovation team for putting this together, especially in time, we're living in unprecedented times, and the fashion industry, especially that in Africa, is suffering a lot. And some of the things that I'm actually going to talk about today are some of the challenges that the sector is facing here on the continent. But as explained by Alexis, I'm Roberta Annan. I'm the founder of African Fashion Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that has supported African designers by giving them opportunities, industry opportunities, giving them education in the business of fashion. We started in 2014 with a fellowship program that places an African designer on the continent with a major international fashion house. Our first ever fellow, Kenneth Eze, worked in New York for 6 months, and I believe it's even one of the people that is listening to us today. But we started in 2014. We've been focused on supporting and bringing infrastructure, funding, and support to African creatives. And I'm very excited to be here today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Farai, if you would like to introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Farai Simoyi. I am based in New York City and Brooklyn. I'm the founder of a company called The Narativ, and The Narativ is a curated house of global brands from all over the world. So we have a storefront location based here in Brooklyn. I'm actually sitting in the store right now. I hope you guys can hear me because we're having a crazy thunderstorm right now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it just came out of nowhere. But yeah, so our goal is to introduce global brands into the US market. So for any brand that comes in, their first stop is The Narativ, where we help them with product placement, merchandising, designing, advertising, marketing, whatever they need to be fully successful in this market, and then also be able to convey and tell their story through their narratives to their customers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And then I'll hand it over to you, Kwaku.
Hey guys, I'd like to say a good afternoon. It's a very hot day in Ghana, and yeah, and want to use this platform also to wish everybody well. And as Roberta said, it's challenging times now. I think this is the first time some of us have got the opportunity to slow down and go back to the table to try and figure out whether or not we've been on course. But again, we'd like to encourage everyone to stay home and just practice all the things that they need to do to make sure that they stay safe. As I said, my name is Kwaku Bediako, CEO, creative designer, and founder of Chocolate Clothes. We set up our business pretty much to be the biggest lifestyle brand in the world, from Africa to the world. And we're in our 7th year now. And what started off as a one-man business is now pretty much a global competitor. And we literally just got into the US market as well. And it's just been amazing. We incorporate the African culture and blend it with yesterday, today, and tomorrow's trends. And yeah, so in a nutshell, that's pretty much who we are. Yeah, so hi.
Okay. Wonderful. So just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Alexis Hernandez. I'm currently the Director of Digital Strategy and Partnerships for African Fashion Foundation, in addition to an empowerment advocate, and I do business and brand strategy consulting freelance as well. So I'm super excited to host this conversation. I've been working with designers of color for over a decade now, and it's something that's really near to my heart. So I'm really excited to get some insight from these three professionals who have a lot of experience. So my first question is going to be, in what ways are you maintaining your African heritage through your business or your product? And Farai, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so the Narativ was really founded on my desire to create a home for brands that are based in Africa, because that's what I know. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I've always, been raised with my culture and my heritage. So about 80% of the brands that we carry at the Narativ are African-based brands. We have brands from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and the list keeps growing. So every day I get the pleasure of looking at beautifully handcrafted luxury contemporary items that are coming out of the continent. And it's amazing because I get to share that work with the US customer that, normally wouldn't have been able to be exposed to certain fabrics and certain materials and certain colors. So my whole entire existence and the work that I do has always stemmed back from Africa.
Wonderful. Roberta?
Yeah, I mean, just like Farai mentioned, I believe everything that I have done on the African Fashion Foundation, and even other businesses like consulting, or even this new impact investment fund that we are putting together for creative, has always had Africa at the center. So we actually create platforms and opportunities for businesses and creative and culture industries, businesses on the continent. So it's always started with what the industry needs, what challenges are the businesses in this industry facing, and we try to find solutions to these challenges. So African heritage has been I believe that's our ethos. It's been at the core of shaping up our businesses, and so it's very much something that I've supported, but I've also looked at addressing things differently. So we need to also look at how we can package ourselves as Africans, especially if we're looking at that global integration of our culture and our heritage. How do we position ourselves to be sustainable competitors for the international market? So then the question is not always about your culture and your identity, but it's actually about business. And how do you make sure that you're ready to do business with markets globally? And these are the things that we've always focused on. It's about advising and supporting designers to think very intelligently about their work, because the creativity is common here. It's the opportunity which isn't. And so we always find a way to give the platform and opportunities to the designers, but at the same time, we also push that for them to strive for excellence. And this is what I've done in my business. And I try to also advise and support businesses to achieve that as well.
Wonderful. Kwaku, I want to ask you the same question, and then if you could actually segue into how you were able to get your brands now into the US market and infiltrating the international market. So the original question, in what ways are you maintaining your African heritage through your business? And then followed up with how you were able to infiltrate the international market. Okay,
great. So, I mean, from where we sit, the name chocolate by nature addresses for us, or means showcasing the positive side of Africa. Or being Africa, or having an African heritage. There are three main touch points which we normally focus on, which is the culture of of us, the people, the land, the history, and we have that showcase in every manner of the designs that we do. I quite remember initially, with our latest collection that we did, which focused on two things. One, which was, on the topic of land and what's actually comes out of Africa. We focused on cocoa being one of our major cash crops, and what we actually did with that was to creatively infuse cocoa sacks into the look. Never been done. Was very interesting, and made waves. We've also, in terms of history and where we've come from, we're going back into processes like tie and dye or adire, going back in, you know, not just the design of or the final the design of the final look, but actually designing certain fabrics and making fabrics which tell the rich history of us and where we've come from. Yeah, so we are constantly celebrating the positives that our continent has to offer, or what our heritage has to offer. And I think, and having this answer, blending this answer to the second question you asked, which is pretty much how we being able to get into the US market, or how we gradually infusing our brand into the US market. I think it's just selling these narratives. Over the past years, there's been less and less information about who we are as a people, what our heritage is all about. There's been struggling acceptance. I've met a lot of people who never really used their traditional names. They always went with their English names and was flaunting it around. But now, you ask people, like my name. I don't even have an English name. My name is Kwaku Bediako. My alias is Rumokuta. People are very keen on finding out what these, what does your name mean? Kwaku means a Wednesday born. What does being a Wednesday born mean? Bediako means a warrior. So I guess we've repackaged. Roberta talked about repackaging. We've succeeded in repackaging what the narrative is, what the history has been, and remodeling the thoughts, the mindsets of Africans, people of African descent, in believing that the culture is value, or the culture means value. And once they're able to embrace who they are as a people, they're able to be successful in their dealing. So I guess that's one of the angles that that's the narrative that we are operating on currently, which is being accepted by people in the US who are Africans or Africans of descent.
Wonderful. Okay, I want to pass that question to Roberta as well. What are some ways that you are helping designers to infiltrate the international market and really make their brands cohesive and competitive?
Okay, I think, that's an interesting question. I believe the entire foundation of African Fashion Foundation was actually set up on giving the opportunity to fashion designers globally, right? So the whole idea was the global integration of our culture. And I'll repeat that again. The reason why I had that mindset is because I was educated, born and raised in Ghana, and in my early teens, I left the continent and I lived in India. And then later on in the United States, where I got my education and lived my adult life. And, when you are out of the continent, like really understanding and embracing your culture becomes even more important, because you want to always identify with a certain group. You start eating and even learning, especially if you're on the continent and you don't even cook your food. Once you're outside, you start to learn, things that actually connect you back to your roots. And being overseas, I learned so much about other cultures, but I really understood, the importance of having your own identity. So when I came back home, I consider myself a returnee. I came back home in 2012 to set up my business. One of the things that I wanted to do was to give people that opportunity to live outside their comfort zone. Because once you're outside your comfort zone, you become very innovative in your thinking, and that's actually what happened to me. You have to survive, you have to think on your feet, you do things differently because you don't have your immediate family members around you that can support you otherwise. I'm not saying that people that are on the continent don't survive, but there's a different level of technique of survival that you learn overseas and you're on your own. So I wanted to give that opportunity to designers because I realized that sending them overseas would allow them to learn different skills. So there's a knowledge transfer component of it There's also a technology transfer component. And in fact, when I say that, it's in two ways. It's not just the African designer learning other techniques in other markets, but it's even the international market learning from our techniques and appreciating, not appropriating, but appreciating our techniques. And these are the things that I always wanted to do for designers. It was a very tedious process, especially in the beginning, but I really wanted to make sure that they got that exposure, because coming back on the continent, it really changes their dynamic and the way they do things. So the entire AFF was actually set up on that, because I experienced that when I got my education in the US and I came back home. I thought, you know what, this really changed and added value to all the things, and even the way I think was very different. So I wanted to give that opportunity to designers to also experience that and then come back and add to what they already have, because we also cannot neglect, our upbringing and the things that are in our environment that actually form our identity. So that is what I wanted to do with AFF. And it's been something that I've been pushing even with the fund. There are other things that are more challenging, than actually just taking on, because I think, like, again, the creativity is here. There are other challenges, and I think even this COVID-19 experience has even heightened the importance of our government turning their attention on the cultural and creative industries in Africa. Because I'll give you an example from an African context, right? When you're looking at even this lockdown scenario, a lot of our businesses are in the informal sector. Creative businesses tend to be in the informal sector, okay? About 86% of our businesses are in the informal sector. So if you tell creative businesses to stay at home for like a month or 2 months, you are pretty much crashing the entire economy. So it's so important to look at different policies and support for these businesses, because they happen to be in the formal sector. So it's really important. In fact, it's made our work super relevant. And we really need the support and the government to kind of join forces with us to ensure that that infrastructure that we need for these businesses are in place. The funding that they need is in place so that these businesses can grow. So yes, we can definitely transport our culture, but we need to identify and really address the infrastructural challenges that we have when you're talking about the creative and cultural industries in Africa.
Got it. And Farai, you said about 80% of the designers that you represent with the Narativ are based on the continent. Can you speak a little bit more about the strategy that you're using to really get their brands known in the international market? Obviously, your store is based in Brooklyn, so that's bringing them to one of the fashion capitals. Exactly how are you positioning them through your company?
Yeah, so I'm based in Brooklyn. So what we ended up doing is hiring a brand curator who's based on the continent. Her name is Quena, and she's based in South Africa. So she's like a fashion influencer, fashion marketer, and she's really built her image on promoting brands like just through her social media platforms. So I met her a few years ago when I was in South Africa doing some work. So we decided to partner. And what she does, anytime she does a collaboration with a brand, she then sends us that brand's information that kind of like is the liaison between brands that are based on the continent and us. And so we've created a whole onboarding session where we ask designers like questions of like why they want to be in the market, how they see themselves, how they want to be positioned. And then we then sort of kind of comb through their brand. We see what kind of marketing they've been doing, what kind of imagery they've been having, and kind of see what their current social media presence is and kind of create a whole package for them in terms of like pricing strategy. Are their prices matching, what's happening here? What kind of seasons are they doing? Because, like Kwaku was saying, it's really hot over in Ghana right now, but it's not, we're in the spring rainy season here. So maybe a collection that they're doing during their season is different from our season. So kind of seeing how we can easily transition them into the US market. And then we also help them in terms of design, because we all know that the US customer is very interesting. They aren't super loyal. There's some of them are loyal to brands, but some of them aren't. And we really want to tap into the customer that's interested in learning about new upcoming brands, because there's a major customer for that. So yeah, there's like a whole process that we put all of the brands through, kind of like a little bit of a fashion boot camp, I like to call it. And then once we feel like they're at a good position and their design sort of fit in with what the customer here is going to be drawn to, we then bring them into our store. So what our store serves as, it's a concept store, but it also doubles as a showroom space. So we do like trunk shows for them, pop-up shops. We also encourage brands to test out new products that they have in the market. So maybe a brand has like 5 colorways and they're trying to, narrow it down to 2 to kind of what their bread and butter combinations are. So we tell them, bring all 5 colorways. Let's see how the customer responds to it before you go into full-blown production. Because a lot of issues that we see with upcoming brands is they'll just create an entire collection, have so much product, and then be stuck with it and not know what to do with it. So in our efforts to be eco-friendly and sustainable, we also want to reduce overconsumption. So yeah, we ask them, test all of your products here. Let's see how they do. If we're unsure about about pricing strategy, we say, all right, bring it in at $100, and then let's see how that price goes. Let's see if we need to, is it flying off the shelves? Maybe we need to, make it $150, or is it sitting for a long time? Maybe let's bring it down to $75. So there's like a whole process that we put them through. And once they've been through sort of like the narrative process, we then help them branch out, because we all know there's multiple avenues for income, there's multiple streams. So we want to reach out to other like retailers that are either concept store level or big box retailers and see what kind of partnerships we can form there. So there's a lot that goes into it, but we are really, drawn to these brands, and our ultimate goal is that we want them to succeed. We want them to grow. We want these African or global brands, wherever they're from, because we also have brands from Mexico, brands from the Philippines. We want them to be fully successful and become household names here in the US market.
Wonderful. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. What changes do you predict will occur as a result of the pandemic that will positively impact sustainability in the fashion industry?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You said what positives do I see?
Yes. Yes.
I definitely see from a brand side, from a manufacturer side, I think we're going to be more focused on sustainability and the whole thing that I was talking about in terms of like overconsumption. I think we're going to be more thoughtful in terms of like how we want to present ourselves to the world. I think as brands, one thing that I've talked to a lot of brand owners is we're trying to figure out like, how do we want to see ourselves in the world? How do we want our brands to shape, the market? And I think a lot of brands are now starting to figure out what are things that I can design and create that are more essential as opposed to fluff. I mean, like we love brands that are like out there and avant-garde, but those are beautiful pieces. And I kind of look at those brands as more of like artworks, art pieces. But now it's like, for example, like our company, we've decided to, instead of, designing apparel, we've decided to go into designing masks, because those items are essential and those are the things that people need. And I think from a consumer side, it goes hand in hand. I think now consumers are now focused on, what do I need? Do I need that beautiful pink, bright, super fabulous jacket? No, I don't need that right now, but I do want a beautiful pink, amazing mask that I can totally wear out and is functional. So I think both consumer and brand designer side, we're all going to be focused on more functional and more essential items in terms of the world of design.
All right, Roberta,
Can you
what are your thoughts on it?
Repeat the question, please.
So the question is, what changes do you predict will occur as a result of the pandemic that will positively impact sustainability in the fashion industry?
I think sustainability is going to be even more important when it comes to the fashion industry. People are going to be, especially consumers, are going to be more concerned about where the products they are buying are coming from. So people are going to inquire more about the processes, how people and fashion designers have actually sourced fabric, who is producing it. One of the things that we're also doing is we're trying to advise brands to look more like to be aligned with causes. So just about a month ago, we launched an initiative which was advertised. We have a partnership going on right now with Vogue Italia. It's called Scouting for Africa. So we're actually looking to give an African designer an opportunity to showcase their work in Milan. We're still trying to figure out the modalities with COVID, if it's going to be an online showcase or an actual physical showcase. But one of the things that we've done and launched online is a project with street women in Ghana called Kayaye. So Kayaye are women that come from the northern parts of the country. And, you know, they're normally young girls between the ages of, I would say, like 9 to about 14, 15. And normally they're brought in to actually, they are giving the impression that they have a job, you know, waiting for them in the city, and then end up here without any, you know, formal like job or any support system or even housing system. So they end up on the streets. So they end up sleeping on the streets. They end up, you know, fending for themselves by carrying loads in the market. So they go after people who are in the market shopping and they carry loads, and they normally make, you know, about 2 cedis, which is about 50 cents, you know, per, and, you know, some of them, you know, carry very heavy loads and they're quite young. So in a sense, it's a form of child trafficking or human trafficking. And these women end up on the streets. So what we're doing now is we've partnered with an organization that has created a reintegration program for these women by giving them counseling, finding opportunities for them to actually get proper employment so that they can be economically empowered. They also go through some form of skills training. So we've partnered with them, and we're working with 3 fashion designers. I'll mention them: Patience Holloway, Ophelia Crossland, and Velma Accessories. So these women are going to be placed with these designers so they can also learn a skill. And our hope is that after that, we either get them full-time employment or we start them off with a trade with some investment. This is also in partnership with The Lot, which is a concept store here in Ghana. So The Lot will actually will sell the pieces that of the collection that I actually created through this collaboration. We also have Fashion for Development, an organization involved as a partner. So these are the things that we're looking to do, because we believe that consumers are going to really want, people are changing, you know, like, oh, this thing has really, I think it's an opportunity for people to reflect and be more connected with, you know, their purpose, and also giving back will become, I mean, this term was coined by Fashion for Development years ago. Giving back is the new luxury. I think it will be, giving back will be the new luxury, because people are going to want to support, you know, designers that are working to, you know, on collections that involve courses like these. And I think this is how we want to position ourselves as, you know, AFF, to support such brands and really highlight the work that they're doing. The other thing that I want to mention is, I feel, you know, when you're looking at the ethical and sustainable value chain, people are going to be more concerned about the environment. So things are going to change a bit in that sense, in terms of fast fashion versus, you know, actually investing into goods that are more expensive, but also have like a story, in terms of how they are processed and manufactured, are produced and manufactured. So people are more concerned about the kind of products that are being used and how harmful they are to the environment. So we have to also be very, to be ready for these type of challenges.
Wonderful. Kwaku, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, quickly. I mean, it's been quite, it's interesting. I think for the first time, although I might say that, you know, it's quite unfortunate what's happening with this pandemic, but again, for us in the fashion world, it's such, the spotlight is on us. There's never been a time when, especially for Africa, it's very difficult for you to explain to government or explain our role till an issue like this surges up. For the first time, designers and tailors and everybody, people in the art are being asked to, to think outside the box and make certain contributions to our healthcare services. That has never happened. That's never ever happened. So you have the likes of myself, my business, other businesses that are being taxed to manufacture hospital scrubs, being taxed to manufacture facial masks, etc. So I feel like it's a feather in our cup, and this is also a message for governments to also take us in the creative world very seriously, which usually is not being done. Also, in terms of being industrial, I mean, we are working, us and Chocolate, Roberta and I, are in talks, and we are working on setting framework. I don't think it will be my place to talk about it now, Roberta. Maybe we can discuss that later on, but we are working on setting infrastructures that will ensure that, when there are pandemics or no pandemics, we can empower ourselves and train people's mindset and skill set to be prepared for whatever and whenever the world is undergoing any change. I think the last thing I'm going to talk about is also the use of fashion. I think over the years, no one has really appreciated the thought process of designers. There's a process that we go through before we come up with a collection. There's a process that we go through before we come up with this particular product, this cuts, etc. And I'm quite excited, for the industry that now people just won't look at the fashion designer or our industry as, oh, we are just excess. People just, we should probably people just come to us because they want to show off their wealth. Now, thanks to the pandemic, we're designing all these masks, or appreciating what type of fabrics being used and making what will come to play. So, I think it's a feather in our cup, and we are going to leverage on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow, that was very insightful. Thank all of you. I think right now, this is one of the most appropriate questions as the pandemic has shifted all of our business models and our production processes. So how are you all utilizing the digital landscape to benefit your business? And I'll start with you, Roberta.
Well, I keep nodding my head because that's also another problem here. If you look at the entire, I am not a creative. I always look at myself as a problem solver and somebody that is supporting creatives in my businesses. But I also understand the challenges that creatives are facing because I work with them on a daily basis. And one of the things that we have here is technology. A lot of businesses, especially if you're talking about the creative businesses overseas, have been able to convert their businesses and gone online. So they have e-commerce. They have proper infrastructure in place when it comes to logistics. So that's another thing that we have to also address, right? So even if I went online today, or I created an app where people can actually purchase online, how am I going to deliver it? I cannot send, in Ghana, we have these dispatch riders, we call them Okada, right? So I'm not going to send an Okada from here to Nigeria to deliver, chocolate. It's like impossible. And with, the challenges that we're facing now with courier companies, even bringing products into the country, how does this even affect us, on a macro level when it comes to Africa? I don't think we have a competitive play in this. So we need to think very innovatively about how we can address and how we can plug in, and one of the things that I feel is an opportunity for us, going from the fact that we don't have the right infrastructure for digital. Social media is great. I think that's one way to sell product, but again, delivery, logistics, that is a challenge. I think we should capitalize on the things like what Kwaku mentioned, which is manufacturing, because this is where I feel the opportunity is for us. When factories are closed in other markets, we have the creativity right here on the continent. We can produce things. We can supply to other places. And I think it's time for us to put measures in place, the right investments into the right. We should put our money where our mouth is. For once, I think we're really being tested. We're really being tested. So let us invest in the things that are dear to us, that when situations like these arise, we can actually fall back on the informal sector. Because this is what we're falling back on them to save our economy. So let's invest in them as well.
So we have 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get as much great information out of you guys as we can during the time that we have. So question from the audience, if each of you could just go through and specify where they can find more information about you and your company online, and then follow it up with your vision for African creatives and African fashion designers. Again, we have about 5 minutes left. So Roberta, I'll let you start, then we'll flow over to Farai and we'll close it out with Kwaku.
I would just say this is a renaissance. This is an opportunity for Africans, in the diaspora and those on the continent to come together and to come up with meaningful opportunities to invest in our infrastructure and also invest in our creative economy, because I believe this is the tool for sustainable development and inclusive growth and development of our continent. My website is www.africanfashionfoundation.org, or you can find more information about on my personal website at www.robertaannan.com. Thank you,
Roberta.
Yeah, you can find us at thenarativ.com, and we spell it kind of funny. So it's THENARATIV. But one thing that I have to say is, especially for like new designers and African brands, like now is our time to capitalize and sort of like put ourselves out there. I mean, right now we have big box retailers like Macy's on furlough, Barney's shut down, opening ceremony shut down, meaning there's now room for us. There's avenues for us to grow. Like we can become the next CEOs of Coach and Prada and Versace, but our own coaches in Prada and Versace. So I feel like now is the time. We have to be innovative. We have to focus on technology, and piggybacking on what Roberta said, it's all about manufacturing. So let's do this.
Love it. Thank you, Farai. And Kwaku, can you close this out, please?
Definitely. I'd like to say a big thank you for this opportunity and to everybody. I think, Africa definitely has a lot to offer. We are close to about 1.5 billion of pure talent. And I think it's time for us to look into how we can contribute by us, for us, and then look into the growth process outside Africa. So to an Africa where we can have our own type of Macy's, our own caliber of malls, etc. And digitally. I mean, we're in 14 African countries, and it's quite interesting how we're able to collate all these orders from all these places, and it's all because of the sort of digital direction that we decided to use. Any which way, how to find us? We are on Instagram, ChocolateClothesGH. And also our website, which we are launching first week in May, is chocolateclothesglobal.com. Thank you so much.